I'm gonna be telling you some super secret things about every single fighting style in Blox Fruits. Okay, so first up we got the combat fighting style, and this is a fighting style everybody gets when they join Blox Fruits. And obviously since you get this by default, it literally costs nothing to buy. It has a total of 2 abilities. The first one is called Quick Tackle, which has a 1 mastery requirement, where the user dashes forward dealing a bunch of damage to the enemy. The second one is called Ground Smash, and this one has a 20 mastery requirement. And this is where the user smashes into the ground, dealing a bunch of AoE damage to players or NPCs around them. Good things about this fighting style is obviously that it's free and you get it as soon as you start the game, but the bad thing is that it's the literal worst fighting style in the whole game, and you should switch to a different one as soon as possible. Alright, moving on, the next fighting style is called Dark Step, and this is a leg-based fighting style, and it can be learned from the Dark Step teacher for the price of 150,000 belly. And the place you find him is in the pirate village on the first sea. The NPC can also be found on the lava side of the hot and cold island in the second sea, and at the castle on the sea at the third sea. This fighting style has a total of 4 different abilities. The first one is called Flying Kick, and this one has only a 1 mastery requirement. It's where the user launches themselves towards their cursor, leaving a decent impact. The next one is called Breakdance, and this is exactly what it sounds like, but instead of actually breakdancing, you're breakdancing while dealing a butt ton of damage to your enemies. The third ability is called Barrage, and what this ability does is just spam a bunch of clicks towards the direction you're looking at, and this one has an 80 mastery requirement. Next up, we got the final ability for this fighting style, Overheat. It has a 150 mastery requirement, and what it does is it basically overheats the user's legs, making them increase their damage by 1.22 for around 30 seconds. But don't worry, you can use the ability again once the cooldown ends. Good thing about this fighting style is all the attacks are AoE, and there's a butt ton of combos you can learn with this. Alright, the next fighting style is called Electric, and this is a fighting style that most players in the first sea should have equipped. It was added to the game in update 2, and it costs a total of 500,000 belly, and you can buy it in the first sea from the Mad Scientist. You can also find the Mad Scientist in the hot area of the hot and cold island located in the second sea. Electric has a total of 3 different abilities. The first ability is called Stomp, and it's pretty self-explanatory. You just leap into the air and slam back into the ground with a butt ton of electrical force. This one has a 50 mastery requirement. Moving on to Electric Tackle, which has a 100 mastery requirement. What you do is you basically dash straight into your opponent or wherever you're aiming with your cursor, and you deal a butt ton of damage to your enemy. The next one is called Electrical Floor, and when this is used on a player NPC, it stops them from moving completely, stunning them in place and dealing a bunch of damage consistently. This one is also area of attack, which means it's really good for grinding. And this fighting style also has a butt ton of combos that you can learn, but you have to pair them with a bunch of other things. Overall, a really decent fighting style, and I definitely recommend this to first sea players. Alright, next up we got Water Kung Fu. This is a fighting style that can be bought from the Water Kung Fu teacher for a total of 750,000 belly, making it the best fighting style in the first sea. The place you find the Water Kung Fu teacher is behind a certain wall in the underwater city, located on the first sea. You can also find him on the hot side of the hot and cold island in the second sea and at the castle on the sea. This fighting style has a total of 3 different moves. The first one is called Steam Charged Fist, and this one you basically punch the air, dealing a bunch of damage to enemies in front of you. And this one has a 70 mastery requirement. The next ability, which is the X ability, is called Deadly Shower, and for this one you need a 130 mastery requirement. For this one you just shoot a bunch of projectiles, similar to the Life Fruit's X ability. Next up we got Heavy Water Punch, and this is the C ability of the fighting style. For this one you basically dash forward and punch an enemy if they're in your way, dealing a bunch of damage, but this one is not area effect, so I don't think it's worth the 250 mastery requirement. What Water Kung Fu is really good at is when you pair it with the Buddha Fruit, and it's overall one of the best fighting styles in the game to grind with, and definitely the best overall for the first sea. Alright, now moving on to fighting styles that are in the second sea. The first one is Dragon's Breath. This one you can buy from an NPC called Sabi for a total of 1,500 fragments in the Kingdom of Rose on the second sea. This fighting style has a total of 3 different abilities. The first one has a 100 mastery requirement, and it's called Dragon Rush, and this is where the user dashes forward twice, punching anything in their way. The X ability is called Dragon Flames, and this one is pretty self-explanatory. You just send a bunch of flames flying forward where your cursor is pointing. The last ability, which has a 300 mastery requirement, is called Dragon Explosion, and this is similar to one of the Bomb Fruit's abilities. You just leap in the air and then you have a huge explosion, dealing a bunch of damage to everybody around you. Overall, a pretty decent fighting style, but I still think Water Kung Fu is better than this one, even though it's ranked a bit lower. Moving on to the next best fighting style. This one is called Superhuman, and it's a fighting style that costs a total of 3 million belly, and it specializes in speed, stuns, and knockback. It's literally the upgraded version of every fighting style, and the way you get this is really difficult. The requirements for this is a 300 mastery on Dark Step, Electric, Water Kung Fu, and Dragon's Breath. And after getting the 300 mastery, you can go talk to the martial arts teacher, and there you can buy it from him. And this is widely regarded as one of the best fighting styles in the game for PvP. The first skill of this fighting style is called Beast Owl Pounce, and this one has a 110 mastery requirement. What this does is it launches yourself towards where your cursor is, and if there's a player there, it just locks them in place and pummels them a bunch of times. The X ability is called Thunderclap, and for this one, you just release a shockwave from your body, dealing a bunch of damage to everything around you. Next up, we got the C ability for this one. It's called Conqueror's Gun, and it has a 330 mastery requirement. For this one, you dash to wherever your cursor is, and you deal a bunch of damage, knocking the player back if they're standing in your way. Overall, really good thing about this fighting style is that it has extremely high combat potential, and one of the best fighting styles in the game. But there is one that's a lot better, and a lot harder to get, and it makes this fighting style look like a joke. Alright, next up is the Death Step fighting style, and this fighting style is the upgraded version of the Dark Step. It was added in update 13, and it can be learned from an NPC called Fiona the Reformed. Once you defeat the Ice Admiral at the second sea, you have a 10% drop chance of getting a key that opens a library to where Fiona the Reformed is. And once you get there, you can buy it for a total of 5,000 fragments and 2.5 million belly. But trust me guys, it's definitely worth it. This fighting style, like its counterpart Dark Step, also has a total of 4 abilities. The first one is called Rocket Kick, and this one is really self-explanatory. You just launch yourself towards someone and kick them super hard. The next one is called Wind Bullet, and for this one, it's actually a long-range attack. So wherever your cursor is pointing, once you click the attack button, then you send a projectile flying towards it, dealing a bunch of damage. The next one is called Vermillion Drill, and what this does is you jump above your enemy, locking them, not letting them move, and kicking them a butt ton of times. Next up, we got Maximum Overheat, which is really similar to the normal ability of the original Dark Step, but this one is a lot better because it lasts for a total of 40 seconds and increases the Death Step's damage by 10%. But it does have a 60-second cooldown, so be careful while using it. This fighting style has the second highest damage out of every fighting style in the game, making it really good for PvP, especially for farming CBs. It has decent area of damage, but there's still some that are better. Bad thing about this overall is that the V move has the highest mastery requirement in the game. You literally need 400 mastery to be able to use it, so you're gonna have to grind a butt ton for this. But there are also a lot of combos, so if you want to maximize your potential with this fighting style, just make sure you learn a bunch of them. Next up, we got my favorite fighting style, Sharkman Karate. This is the upgraded version of Water Kung Fu, and it's considered to be one of the best fighting styles in the game because of its grinding potential. The way you get this is by talking to the NPC called Dyrock the Sharkman, and he will let you buy this unique fighting style in exchange for the Water Key. The Water Key is dropped by the Tidekeeper with a 15% chance of dropping, and this boss is pretty tough, so it's gonna take you a bunch of tries to get the key. But even after you get the key, you need to pay Dyrock a total of 2.5 million belly along with 5,000 fragments, exactly the same as Death Step. And when you combine this fighting style with the Buddha Food, it's literally unstoppable in grinding, and doing that trick is the best way to grind in the game. This fighting style has a total of 3 abilities. The first one is called 12 Water Palms, and for this one you just send yourself flying forward, dealing a bunch of damage to anything in your way. The X ability is called Pressure Vortex, and this one has a 200 mastery requirement, and for this one you just shoot a projectile towards your enemy, dealing a bunch of damage and sending them flying back. Next up is the C ability, and this one has a 300 mastery requirement. For this one, you pull your enemies towards you and then you send them flying backwards. The good thing about this ability is that it's the best grinding fighting style in the whole game. It also has a high combo potential, but there's still some that are a bit better. It has great range and it's really easy to hit. Overall, a really good fighting style. In my opinion, one of the best in the game. Next up, we got another heavy hitter, and this one is called the Electric Claw, and it's the upgraded version of the electric fighting style from the first sea. And the way you get Electric Claw is first you gotta get 400 mastery on the electric fighting style, and then you gotta find the previous hero NPCs located close to the Logma boss at the floating turtle in the third sea. Then all you gotta do is talk to him and do a quest that requires you to get to the mansion in under 30 seconds. You can kind of cheese this one if you have the portal fruit or the light fruit. And once you pay him 3 million belly and 5,000 fragments, you can equip the fighting style from him anytime you want. Electric Claw has a total of 3 different abilities. The first one is called Electrical Rampage. For this one, it locks the user in place, hits them with the claws a bunch of time, and dashes into them, dealing a bunch of damage. This one has a 110 mastery requirement. Next one is called Lightning Trust. This one has a 220 mastery requirement. For this one, you just charge your enemy, and then there's a huge electrical explosion, dealing a bunch of damage to your enemy. Next ability is called Thunderclap and Flash, and this one has a 330 mastery requirement. For this one, you just dash around the place a bunch of times and then finally into your enemy, pummeling them into the ground and dealing a bunch of damage. And the really good thing about this ability is that all of its skills can be used for movements, even its M1 ability, and it has a really high damage perk. Like, I'm pretty sure this is the second most powerful fighting style in the game. Bad thing though is it's pretty difficult to obtain because you need a 400 mastery on the electric fighting style, and then you also got to pay a bunch of money. But overall, a really good fighting style, and this might be the second best fighting style in the game. Just wait till you see what's first. Alright, next up we got the Dragon Talon fighting style. This fighting style was added in update 16, and the way you get it is by talking to the Uzalt NPC. And obviously it's the upgraded version of Dragon's Breath. The way you get it is by obtaining the Fiery Essence from the random surprise, which you can buy from the Death King at the Haunted Castle by trading in 50 bones. And once you give him the Fire Essence, you can learn Dragon Talon at any time. But the requirements for this are a 400 mastery on Dragon's Breath, and you also gotta have 3 million belly spare along with 5,000 fragments. This fighting style has a total of 3 different abilities. The first one is called Talon Lighter, and for this one you dash straight into your enemy, pummeling them a bunch of time, and there's literally even blue flames, making it look really cool. The X ability is called Ember Annihilator, and for this one you send a huge fiery projectile flying towards your enemy, launching them back and dealing a bunch of damage. The C ability is called Infernal Vertex, and for this one you just create a huge fiery inferno, dealing a buttload of damage to everything around you. Probably the best ability from this fighting style in my opinion. Good thing about this fighting style overall is that all of its skills do an area of damage, making it really good for grinding. But the bad thing is that it's pretty hard to obtain because you have to meet all the requirements. Overall, a pretty decent fighting style, but nothing in comparison to what's next. Alright, now we got the fighting style you've all been waiting for, the literal best fighting style in the whole of Blox Fruits. God Human. God Human is the upgraded version of the superhuman fighting style, and literally the strongest fighting style in the whole game because it deals the most damage out of all of them. But wait till you hear the requirements for this one. You gotta have a 400 mastery on superhuman, death step, sharkman karate, electric claw, and dragon talon. On top of that, you gotta have 5 million belly spare along with 5,000 fragments, making it the hardest to get fighting style in the whole of Blox Fruits. And you also need these materials. You need 20 fish tails, 20 magma ore, 10 dragon scales, and 10 mystic droplets. But trust me, it's definitely worth it because it's really overpowered. So it has a total of 3 abilities. The first one is called Soaring Beast, and for this one you launch yourself forward towards any player next to you and you just lock them in place and you just pummel them a bunch of times. The next ability is called Heaven and Earth, and this ability actually has 2 different versions. For the first one, if you just click it, it just shoots a projectile towards where your cursor is located, and if you hold the button, then you start dealing a bunch of damage to everything around you. The last ability is called Sixth Realm Gun, and this also has 2 versions. If you just click the button, then you just dash forward to where your cursor is, pummeling any enemy in your way. And the second version of this is if you hold it, you charge up and you dash towards where your cursor is, and you deal way more damage than the initial click. And this ability, in my opinion, is one of the most overpowered from this style. Overall, God Human is the strongest fighting style in the game, but you probably won't be getting it anytime soon.